What's up guys, Hunter Konechny here. Today we're talking lipless crankbaits. So I feel like a lipless crankbait is something that's just not utilized as often as it could be, and myself included. I threw this thing all winter long and was killing them all winter, and I really haven't done it until today. I caught some really good fish on it. I was like, wait a minute, I mean, that's something that I should have been doing all along. So I felt like it was a good time to just jump into it. It's something that really goes hand in hand with some of your just general deep crankbaits, and it's another way to show them something maybe they haven't seen before. So without further ado, let's get into it. So the lipless crankbait, the way I'm generally going to fish this in the summer is going to be a little bit different than maybe you'd suspect with like shallow water fishing, for example, you might do in the spring or the fall. So the way I'm going to fish this, you bomb that thing out there, and I like fishing this around like rocky stuff. So your points, your humps, your ledges, things like that. In Arizona, I'm generally going to be doing this anywhere from like 15 to 40 feet of water, and I'm going to use my electronics or what depth the fish bites happen at to kind of dictate where the fish are. So if I know that the majority of the time they're sitting in 20 feet of water, that's generally what I'm going to kind of really key in on and focus on harder. And then I'll use different tools and different things like that to really kind of hone in where they are. But once I have a feel for what depth they're generally in, that's what I'm going to mostly focus on. But like I said, I really like fishing this around rocky type stuff. So rock piles, points, ledges, things like that is really going to be where I'm doing this the majority of the time. So the way that you fish this, you bomb that thing out there, you let it sink all the way to the bottom. And once it's on the bottom, it's pretty easy to do. So I'll show you kind of right here. I got my rod right here. You're going to cast it out, let it sink to the bottom. Once you know it's on the bottom, you're going to do it a little bit sooner so I don't get stuck and have to go get this, but you're going to let it sink to the bottom. You're going to rip that thing up like a spoon and then let it sink back down on slack line. And then you're going to reel up, and then you're going to rip it up like a spoon. You're going to reel it back down. So it's very easy to do. You're just kind of hopping that thing all the way back to the boat. And a lot of times this just triggers them and makes them react when they might not be super aggressive. So when that thing's just coming by, it falls right in front of their face there, and then it just shimmies back up. They just have to lash out and get it. So some of the bites I was getting today, about ripped my rod out of my hand when they were hitting that. So pretty easy to fish, definitely something that works very well. And the good thing about this is you can fish any depth. So it doesn't matter if you're going to 40, 50, 60 feet if you need to. You just keep working that thing down the bottom, and it's always going to be in the strike zone from 0 to however deep you're going. So when you're just fishing down some of those steeper walls, steeper rocky banks, things like that, it can be very effective for that. And something I've really caught a lot of fish on. I have a lot of confidence on. Caught some big ones. My dad, when we were fishing one of the tournaments this winter, caught the big fish on the day on this lipless right here. So I mean, it catches big ones, it catches numbers. It's just a good all-around technique. So kind of covered the way that I would fish it. So I'll go into some different baits, and really you can keep this pretty simple. There's liplesses that work good for this, and there's liplesses that work good to just throw and kind of wind like just a standard retrieve, like you just chuck it out there, wind it back. So the ones I'm going to mention today, I feel like are better for more of the bottom hopping type technique. And that's something that you're probably going to want to get if you want to try this out. So my personal favorite one, caught the most fish on this, just good all around bait, it's the Lucky Craft LV500. So these things are pretty loud, and it can really draw them, especially when they're aggressive in the summer. So the LV500 has really been one that's worked very good for me. Another one that's pretty similar is the Jackal TN70. You can kind of see that there. They're pretty similar in size, honestly. Like, there isn't a reason really one fish would bite one versus the other as far as size goes, but they have a drastically different sound. So you can kind of hear this one. This is the Jackal one. This is the Lucky Craft. So it's a pretty different sound. At certain lakes, one sound's going to work way better than the other. So you really got to kind of experiment between them and see which one that they want, because there is going to be one out of those two that's going to generally work better at your lake. So I've had a lot more success on the LV around our lakes at Arizona. That's the one I generally steer towards. The Jackal's a great bait as well, but I generally like leaning towards the LV. But there's other parts of the country where that Jackal really might shine. And then another one, this one is going to be much more small in profile, and just way more subtle in general. So this is the Nomad. I believe it's the 57 size, so it's the 1/2 ounce one. I've caught a lot of fish on this one when they wouldn't bite those other two. So Alamo, for example, all winter long I was throwing this Nomad one and just killing them out there, and they would not touch the other two. So between the three of them, that kind of gives you all the options you would generally need. So I would start with the LV and the Jackal. See which one works better. You're gonna have to kind of back and forth, just switch until you start to get bites on them and just see which one's working better for the day. Then you can kind of start to steer more towards that more often once you know what sound they like better. If they won't bite those two, then try that Nomad. Like I said, it's a lot more subtle, a lot quieter. You can hear that one. Just way more quiet. It's almost like a blade bait, honestly. And it gets through there a lot more quiet, and they bite it sometimes when they won't bite the aggressive ones. So that's definitely something you should try. If you're fishing clear water, if it's just tough in general, then that smaller size one can really shine. So that's generally what I'm gonna do when I'm doing those. Those three baits so far are the ones that I've had the most success on, and ones that I have a lot of confidence in. That's what I would use if I was fishing myself. As far as colors, I don't really get too crazy with that. I'm just gonna throw some kind of shad color. So I honestly don't, I think this is like Aurora shad or something along those lines, but just some kind of shad color. This is pretty similar. So if I'm fishing dirtier water, then you can get more of the opaque type colors, a little bit more bold. Maybe you mix a little chartreuse in there. If you're fishing clear water, then I keep it pretty natural. So I'm gonna throw something that's more translucent like this one. And I'm gonna lean towards that. So the clearer the water gets, the more natural I'm gonna get with it. If it's dirtier water, make it a little bit more bold. That's about as far as I go with the colors. And honestly, I mean, there's 15 Lucky Craft colors that are pretty similar to this. So as long as it's some kind of shad color, you're probably gonna be doing just fine, and you don't really need to get much further into it than that. With these techniques, I do like using a little bit heavier line. So anywhere from like, I'd say 16 is probably gonna be kind of the sweet spot. If you go too light with it, your line gets a little bit too limber, and the hooks can get around and foul it pretty easy. So if you lose a little bit heavier line, it helps you preventing it from fouling, and it can be more effective for you. It gets rid of some of the frustration. So 16 is a good place to start. I've thrown it as low as 10, but if you're throwing it on 10, I just feel like it's tangled a lot and you're kind of having some problems. And while you're doing this too, it is going through the rocks the whole time. So you do need to be constantly checking your line, and having a little bit heavier line can help prevent break-offs and losing baits and things like that. So 16 is a good place to start. Always throw it on fluorocarbon. And then one other thing to remember with this is the whole time you're fishing this, it's making contact with the rocks. So when you rip that thing up, you let it sink back down to the bottom, and then it's on the bottom, you're just grinding those hook points into the rocks all day long. So you really want to be making sure that you're monitoring that and making sure your hook points are good, because you will lose fish if you let that go for too long and you don't change either the bait out with fresh hooks or just change the hooks on the bait. So you want to be watching that. And I mean, some days it might only take an hour and you've dulled those hook points and you need to swap those hooks out. Some days, maybe you get a half day out of it, or someday maybe you get the full day out of it. But regardless, you're making contact with those hook points all day long into the rocks, and you're just asking for problems if you're not checking that. So if they are dull, spend the 3 minutes it takes to just change them real quick, and that will help you catch more fish. So as far as equipment, I'm gonna throw this on a 7 or an 8-to-1 reel pretty much always. When you're moving forward pretty quick with the boat, having that little bit extra speed and like that 8-to-1 can really help you just kind of keep caught up with it always, because when you're ripping it and you're having to catch up with the line, like just having a faster reel makes it easier. It's definitely something that I would recommend if you have it. A 7-to-1 will work fine as well. As far as the rod, I'm gonna do this with the bigger one. So like the LV 500 is a 3/4 ounce bait, and I believe the Jackal is as well. It might be a 5/8, but either 5/8 or 3/4. So they've got some weight behind them. So that in mind, I like throwing that on a medium heavy. If you had like a medium heavy, moderate fast action, that's probably gonna be just about perfect, but I throw them on a fast action rod all the time too. So anywhere from that like 7 foot to 7'3" range is generally gonna be what I'm leaning towards when I'm grabbing a rod for this. And I mean, that's something that most people are gonna have. So you don't necessarily need specialized equipment specifically for this. Just use that medium heavy rod that you have and you're gonna work out just fine. So that's gonna pretty much wrap it up. Like I said, this is a very effective way to fish them. I mean, you can fish from 0 to 40 feet effectively, and there just isn't that many ways to do that and draw a reaction like this can do. So I would recommend you give this a try. I'm guessing this probably isn't something that you've been doing lately. So let me know what you think. Once you give it a little run, like, are you getting good fish on it? You catching numbers? Like, how's it working out for you? Other than that, that's pretty much it. So if you like this video, please subscribe to the page. And if you have any other video ideas, I'm making educational content like this all the time. So drop a comment below. Let me know some of the things you want to see. I'd be happy to cover the topic. So other than that, hope you guys have a good rest of your day, and watch out for the next one.